Welcome back to the Geometric View, Season 7, Episode 74. In this episode, we get deep into hair follicles, the geometry of hair spin, tail spin, and how hair is directly connected to our senses and everything that we detect in reality.
So the 2022 Electromagnetic Universe World Expo was amazing. We'll be releasing the episodes weekly on this channel.
The link is in the show notes below.
The Geometric
Let's get into
View.
the circuit.
We greatly appreciate your support. The best way to donate to us is on PayPal. Just send money directly to goldenscaling@gmail.com. Thank you very much.
I started recording. So what you please say that again. You're talking about hairs and you're doing a study on hairs.
Right. I'm putting together the paper on what we had discussed earlier, the kind of an important, Ramon made a comment, hey, I think there's something to hair. And so I started digging into it further. And something like simple as the follicle. Let's take the follicle as an example. Every time we see a follicle, we look at it from a more, I say it's three-dimensional, but it's really been sliced and diced and stuck on a petri dish and then a microscope pointed to it. And then we see what a follicle looks like. But never really in its natural state. It's very difficult to see the hair follicle without disruption. But if you look at it, it has almost just like the picture of Jupiter that you guys shared the other night during your show. It has that symmetry almost of, I don't know. Right. Yeah, exactly. It's got that
outgrowth.
Right. Everything like that. So it's a frequency modulator, so to speak.
Collimated cylindrical, all the stuff that Don Scott talks about with Bessel functions, all those words, all the stuff that I use. Yeah. I've been talking about hairs for a long time on all my shows and how it leads to all of our senses. All of our senses detect reality using hairs. Even our eyes, all the way down to our rods and cones, which could be considered like hairs.
One of the most notable items that I put in the paper already, but was the fact that the Rastafarians, their traditions kind of, going to the dreadlocks, but their traditions kind of spawned from the African tribes, the Mysians in Africa, and they all share the same dyeing of the hair red, utilizing ochre, as the native tribes in the U.S. I found that very interesting. Back to the whole dyeing of the hair red and using the ochre during ceremonies and to honor certain celestial events, they're dyeing the hair red together, and that's happened. I mean, we see that even to this day with the Malta, the priests in Malta, they'll dye their entire body the red ochre during Festivus every 24th, whatever, December, or 23rd, whatever Festivus is there for Malta. But yeah, I think the red ochres and the dyeing utilizing the red ochre is also a very kind of significant correlation.
The more you study how we pick up on the logarithmic scale invariant patterns that we see in that exact manner, the more we realize that the landscape is our eyes and our senses are a direct reaction to light. Since our eyes and our senses detect everything through logarithmic scale invariant, they're a direct reaction to the reality being sculpted from a logarithmic scale invariant on a logarithmic scale invariant manner.
The approach that I'm taking with it initially, I think, is okay. So just taking your rationale there, I hear what you're saying and I understand that. I think there is a grid work laid out. But once you have, like, the whole concept of an observer makes an observation that changes the item with which they're observing, I think that applies as above, so below to almost everything, in the sense that, so for utilizing hair as the example again, the follicle, it acts almost as the frequency modulator for the filaments as they are produced and as they continue to come into reality. The frequency modulator being the follicle, based upon all of the different variances within the human body, whether it be energetically, whether it be materialistically, such as the heavy metals or the different types of nutrients and stuff inside of the body feeding the epidermis. That becomes the frequency modulator in itself for the way that that hair will grow. And the natives, they talked about with straight hair, the individual understood how to let go and flow more freely with force, whereas with curly hair, the individual understood the spirals of energy and would have more of a approach towards source in the energetic understanding of life. And they were two very different variances of understanding of the spirit based upon their traditions of just having curly or straight hair. So yeah, I hear what you're saying. I keep, for some reason, going back to there's the grid work there for the overarching energetic field and logarithmic outline. But once we, or not even we, but even, I don't even know if using the word matter here is the right word to use, but whenever any kind of item comes into existence, into this world, it immediately has an effect upon that grid work. Does that make sense? Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, I'd say it already has an effect before it even comes into existence and after it even goes out.
Before? How before?
Well, because the
anticipation, the anticipation
has a bow shock, and that bow shock is like, a bow shock, whatever. That bow shock there that is on the front of everything. It's before the asteroid. That energetic field exists before the asteroid, before any type of anything that a plane going at the speed of sound. Everything has this curvature of space in front of it. There's a bow shock, and that's all part of the field that exists before the object exists.
Yeah, but is that not a causality? You see,
everything's causality.
Yeah, everything. It's all deterministic. There's
God, it's hard to wrap your head around it. It truly is.
It's just that everything is constantly spiraling outward in like 12 different directions in the isotropic vector matrix along the grid lattice work. Every atom is doing it all the time, and has direct connection to source, as does all other living things, through chirality. And there's a really specific way in and a really specific way out. And a lot of it involves the hair. The hair is what spirals and vibrates. When the wind goes by, it twists, it shakes, it vibrates, it undulates.
Right.
You on your epidermis, on your dermis, subdermal. I mean, that's what allows you to get hair stacks standing up on the back of your head, because your gut's connected directly to the skin or to the hairs. Look, your tongue has hairs on it. The hairs are taste receptors. Taste is hairs. Your ears have cilia. It's all cilia. Your lungs are filled with cilia. So the more you start studying cilia, the more we're going to start understanding the direct connection to all of our senses. I don't think we'll ever find out. Well, who knows when or if we'll ever find out if I forget what I was going to say.
How that relates or correlates as far as the overarching grid map of this realm with which we exist is what is kind of in my you know what I'm saying? Like,
that's what I was going to say. The senses are deceptive, extremely deceptive, and there's a plasticity, a neuroplasticity to it that's tied directly to our fears, our hopes, our wishes, our dreams. If we're afraid of something, then we go outside and we're afraid of it. Our hair stands up and we're all being guided by our gut because we're afraid, and our gut bacteria is our microbiome in our gut is just out of whack because of your brain and your thoughts. If you think like that, your whole reality is going to be like that every day. That's why people have fears and can't go out, and phobias, and can't go outside and stuff. And I don't know. It's nuts how everything.
Yeah, it is truly all tied in back together and back around again.
Yeah.
But it all comes, I mean, it's just back down to the protein level. I'm almost at the not microscopic level, but at the cellular level. It's protein generation.
Well, we're doing we're making fake proteins now. It's incredible that somehow we've figured out how to create synthetic proteins, and that is exactly what the mRNA vaccine is inside of Moderna. It is a synthetic biology, and apparently the tech Ray Kurzweil from Google, or a futurist. He's been I think he worked for Google, but whatever. He's a futurist, and he says that everything, all the drugs in the future are going to be those vaccines, mRNA vaccines that are programmed synthetic viruses.
Well, I personally, and this is just my personal belief, you know, I think that the flood story and Noah and the Ark, this is based upon, in my mind, and it's just me from things that I've read, and it has more to do with the fact that all of humanity had been infected with exactly what you're talking about, and there was no further actual human standalone bloodline any further, and therefore catastrophic results for the basic, what we now know as Noah's Ark, was really just a story of how we all got to where you're talking now and accepted these infiltrations into what was God's initial, I don't know what to say, plan. Well, creation's plan as a creation. We went and synthesized it. We went and made it synthetic.
Evidence of what you're talking about. Yeah, evidence of exactly what you're talking about exists. It's in Egypt. They used to bottle up viruses. We know that. So they experimented with biowarfare and viruses. That's the same thing. And they knew how to get how to create all sorts of weird stuff, you know, with witchery and voodoo and who knows. And you mix this with that, and it explodes. I mean, there's still curses in jars that nobody can figure out. I mean, isn't that basically what the Mummy was about? And what it's always about?
Yeah.
And because people that go in there die. I was literally, right before you called, I was listening to Angkor Wat, the discovery of Angkor Wat, and the guy died within a year after finding it because of getting bit by a poisonous bug. Angkor Wat is one of the most beautiful things. It's the largest religious structure in the world, still to this day. And
I'm more of a Borobudur person.
If you trace all of the lines from the Nazca lines, and you trace them around the globe, they all line up at Angkor Wat.
Yeah, that kind of stuff's never really impressed me, to be honest with you. And the reason is because you can do that with a lot of sites. Like you could do it with Stonehenge. You can do it with all sorts of stuff.
You can do. I know ley lines kind of, but that one specifically, the lines don't. They don't only match up. They it's the direct hit with crosses. I mean,
yeah.
If that just points out that on the globe there's a polarity, an equal exact polarity.
That can be a literal feature of the geometry. So, for example, I'm sure you're aware that a four-legged table cannot stand on any surface, but a three-legged table can, and that is a function of the being three-dimensional. So there are some things that happen not because there's planning or anything, but because of the results of the curvature and the geometry in the specific type of geometry. And the thing is, the actual ley lines that I've ever found have been electrogeological, and they don't follow any of that. I've not found that they go straight. I've not found that they connect to. Now, some sites appear to have been created specifically because there's energy vortexes. So the Great Serpent Mound is at a crypto explosive site. There is measured electrogeology at the Mount Horeb Mound here in Fayette County, but doesn't appear to have anything to do with the Daniel Boone ley line or the Lichtenberg of the Knobs region. So now I'm not saying it doesn't, because its mouth faces the Palladian Thunderbolt site, but it doesn't face it directly, and we don't know the physics. Without a supercomputer, we don't know the physics of why. I assume there was a crater rim discharge at the edge of the mound, and they built the mound up around the where the crater rim discharge happened. But what is true is if you cut the C hinge mound out, and then you just rotate it without changing scale, it drops directly into one of the 56 craters at the Palladian site. And if you rotate it around, the C hinge of the mouth sits dead in the center of the burn. You can just see the remnants of the crater burn, and over in the other site. And these are about, I don't know, 7 miles from each other, something like that. And outside of that C hinge mouth, there is about a mile away a Longburrow mound. But I don't know if that proves that there was energy flowing between the C hinge and the Palladian Thunderbolt. I'm just saying, we don't know. I've just always been very skeptical of these things. Now, I do think the Bosnian pyramids show a lot of interesting alignments. I think that shows some planning, but it's not perfect, and neither is the stuff up at in Ohio. And I think that's important. That the fact that it's not perfect is useful.
Could these be different structures built at different times, all aligning with a magnetic pole, potentially? Maybe. And whenever the majority of the Nazca lines were built, let's assume for a second the energetic pole was in Angkor Wat versus other times.
The thing is, the Nazca lines have been built over a 3,000 year period, so half of them aren't actually Nazca; they're Parakan.
Right.
And some of them are older than Paracas. They keep finding.
I don't know enough about.
That's if you trust. Again, that's if you trust the dating, because what they do to date them is they have to turn over a stone inside and try and find organic material, and then carbon date the organic material, assuming that when the Nazca line, because the way they're made is by scraping the sand and revealing,
right.
And there's just dates of growth. And that's what makes the different colors. So like the same thing with the Three Rivers petroglyphs. I don't trust the dating on the Three Rivers petroglyphs. But the Inca made it clear that they weren't the one that created the Nazca lines. So, as far as we know, that whole site could be 10,000 years in one long stretch.
True.
So I'm not exactly sure how or why we got here. But my favorite part that we were talking about is the hairs. If we could talk about hairs and maybe how the Vril Society, and Vril is nothing more than prana, which is the ether or the energy, an all-pervasive energy that's also referred to as kundalini or chi, and how somehow some of the first people, and then that also went on to lead to start Hitler, and a lot of them also were part of the Nazi Party. Somehow the Vril Society tapped into this energy, and the whole idea of UFOs started, and maybe again, because I'm sure it's always been part of the narrative here and there, flying creatures and vehicles. But what about our hair? What about this hair? Does anybody know about?
If you look at like, let's assume the headscarves and the abayas worn by the Middle Eastern women, for me, the bowler hat used by the English gentleman is a great starting point for understanding this. You know, there's this massive tradition of always wearing a hat on your head when outside. You walk into the temples and the churches or the cathedrals, you always had to have your hair covered. And I think it had to do with being an antenna, otherwise you're just going to have it going everywhere. It's going to be static electricity everywhere.
In Christianity, the women had to cover their heads, and the men didn't have to for years.
But they always kept their hair shorter in a lot of times, and we can go into the European culturalism of all that, but I think when you look at just the scientific nature of it, hair being almost an antenna, almost a
it's fairly simple to me that hair is a sign of physical appointed to physical age, well-being, everything else. If a person's got good hair, for a start, if you scan say 100 people and a couple of them have absolutely shining, resplendent hair from the back, when they turn around, you would expect them to have pretty beautiful, radiant faces. You know what I'm saying? It's a complete pointer to one's health. That's why all the models have great hair. You don't see any with the crappy falling hair.
Or wigs,
right?
yeah. All of Hollywood uses wigs, and they all just cut their hair short and put different hats on.
Yeah, so for them it's a big external or a matter of disguise, or it's a big show of sexual, I don't know, whatever maturity, I don't know.
Vitality, yeah.
Yeah, vitality.
So that's my point.
All the rest of it.
So how does I think Ramon, I'm about to interrupt you, sorry man, but I think what you're about to say is how is the energetic coding stored, or does the hair go about storing that energetic coding?
Similar.
Well,
it's because I think that the antenna. Hold on, guys. I think that the hair may be acting as an antenna, first of all, and then secondly, the DNA can act as an antenna. So perhaps the hair is able to both store DNA, but then also radiate, and we can sense something in the hair with our eyes and just being around that person's hair. Because the funny thing about hairs is they're incredibly irritating. People don't like them in their food. They don't like them anywhere but on the head. But there's something extremely alluring about the hair. When the hair is luxuriant, it like, say you're in an elevator and there's somebody with luxuriant hair, and then people add smells to make them even more enticing. So there's something that's extremely alluring to the spiritual level. There's something
is the
inside
hair the bow shot for the DNA? Could we call it that?
It might be some kind of advertisement mechanism.
Or right, like the hair, because Buddy was talking about the bow shot earlier. Maybe it's just the bow shot for the DNA strand of the human being.
Well, that makes sense, because a lot of the times where hair is where the smell is. It's where you're giving off a scent from. So, take for example your armpits and hair, and your crotch, your private area, even boob hair, tit hair. you know, teat. I mean, literally the teat, the tit, whatever. The hair everywhere. Why won't this annoying hair go away? I mean, people sometimes like it, people sometimes hate it. But we can't deny that it's in our ears and it grows bigger in our ears. Maybe that's so we can hear better as adults. It helps us hear better, possibly, because when the cilia is all gone, when the hair in our ears is gone, you can't hear anything.
We
I think
have
a lot of it
a
has
lot
to
of
do with
hair
protection
to
as
protect
well.
our bodies as well.
Same thing as the nose.
And the eyebrows, it protects our eyes from the UV. They grow long.
I'm from cuts. I mean, and cuts, and it stops you getting cut as bad if you've got hair on or a beard.
And bugs.
Well, and now, real quick, I know that hair varies in color based upon the melanin plus or minus content, but for myself, I was born with blonde curly hair.
Yeah.
Right, and now I have straight black hair. Period.
Black or brown?
Yeah. Dark brown, so closer to black than it is. But it's and same thing with my older brother, and I don't think my younger brother had that, but my older brother had the same issue. He was blonde haired and blue eyed at birth. You know, now I'm green eyed and brown hair, and the same thing with him. So what caused those changes to occur from birth till now? And that's not uncharacteristic. You know, I mean, I think that happens with a lot of people.
Are you saying it could be epigenetics causing this?
I think it goes back to the DNA, coming into the universe, coming into the realm, acting as the frequency modulator or the frequency modulator.
Yeah.
Then all of that, then because of the externals, so then once you initially come, you have the externals that affect that grid-like structure that you have done so well at describing, but that, and I had to use the term again, the retard potential, you know. So as the DNA is sending out signals, you have heavy metals, you have stresses from the day-to-day life that affects your energetic field, you have traumas that take place, whatever the case may be, it's going to affect that individual. And then as a result, the bow shot that is being constantly renewed in a state of perpetual motion, that bow shot being the hair, changes, it weakens, it deteriorates, whatever, you know, or it grows, it gets better, you know, etc. So I don't know. I think there's something to that. I really do.
Yeah, I think the editing comes in because reality is nothing like any of us perceive. We all have different perceptions of reality. Some of us are, all of us are in different understandings of it and categorizing it. But like the Matrix reveals like the underground structure, you know, like as if the Dougherty set would be like the Matrix in the baseline grid, and once you start thinking about everything, thinking about everything like that, our senses are hiding what reality is. That's what our senses' job is, to normalize our reality to something that we can comprehend. Okay. All of our senses and our hairs are doing that. My hairs are standing up on my body talking about this.
Dang, it's protection. It's back to what Nick was. It's just protection. It's just hairs of protection.
Well, I mean, the thing is that the defense chi has a lot of properties. So the defense chi, of course, is your immune system, but it's a lot more than that. There's 3 layers to it, and it regulates, it contains, it motivates and moves. It lifts. It obviously it protects, but it also wards off. It does warn you when there's danger. You have a lot of different forms of the defense chi. Now, the layer that we're probably most interested in here is the layer that's supposedly only half inch to an inch off the body, or even just at the surface, depending on the layer of skin, and that must be related to the hair, because the best offensive chi tends to be the strongest offensive chi tends to be where there's more hair. And also the hair helps to it starts to appear in areas that become deficient, specifically the Mingmen area in the low back and the lumbus. So there's something to that. I don't know if it has an effect on the 1.5 foot bubble that people have. Maybe. I mean, the thing is, when hair stands on end, like cats, it does seem to expand the warning zone that people and animals feel. I know that horses,
and
they start switching their hair in certain ways. Do not get near that horse.
Yep. Defense mechanisms. Think about the color in animals changing color.
Well, let's just real quick. The reason when I said protection, I meant in terms of understanding the realm with which we exist. So if you come in as a child into this world and have full, complete understanding of 4 and 5 and 6 and 10 different dimensions and all of these things that we've been discussing here, but as a child you have this understanding, it will absolutely cause you to go in probably a catatonic state. I'm sorry.
When you're in the womb, you keep growing cilia, and then I heard that you keep losing your cilia, I think, and a baby has a lot of extra cilia. That's what makes the baby skin soft. So I remember, I think that the baby is inhaling the cilia, so the its own cilia inside of the whatever that liquid's called. I forget.
Amniotic fluid.
Amniotic fluid.
Yeah.
And Jinx, and that is going in the baby's lungs, and not only that, but the hair itself is your lungs are filled with hair, and that's how you get also psychoactive substances and get high and smoking weed, and you get it affects the hair. But so therefore it's affecting your perception also. You put it on
here's
your tongue,
what I wrote.
Your tongue receptors, taste buds are taking it in your hair. Anyway, hair everywhere.
So each lattice stack modulated by the potential of the previous and the anticipation of the next, all intermingling with the surrounding medium to create what we see and touch and feel as hair. That's what I wrote.
Yeah, and Walter Russell says that our senses are I know this one. I'll remember it. Okay, so what our senses are doing is disguising the true reality from us, because true reality is too scary for anybody to actually understand, including all the bugs, including all the bears. If everything was afraid, there would be no curiosity, there would be no bravery, there would be no strength. You'd literally, if our senses weren't guarding the truth from us and only giving us bits and pieces that we then digest at night and help each other digest at night, we literally would see something like probably like voidance of everything, potentiality fields, like the Dougherty set, and we would be lost. That's why you start seeing that stuff when you teach psychotropics, because you start seeing the true reality. And people say that oftentimes it's more real than reality when they're in these states and they meet these creatures that do exist in the spiritual world. The spiritual world is 98% reality. The physical visible reality is only 2%. Is the electromagnetic spectrum evolving? And it is. Yeah, light. We're just one step in light cycle. We're evolving into the next being. Maybe it's AI, maybe it's cyborgs, maybe it's transhumanism that's being pushed as the new eugenics. But all sense and sensation is resistance to separation. That's what it is. That's Walter Russell's. All sense and sensation is resistance to separation. Separation from what? Separation from the source. That's why most religions believe there's a curse or a code or a separation from God here on earth. And a lot of them say that this is hell. Christianity says this is hell. According to Christianity. I'm sure a lot of people think that this is like jail for doing bad things in other universes. you have to go to Earth. Like, oh man.
Well, a lot of people also believe it's a school.
Yeah.
For the training of souls to not necessarily, get rid of karma, but to understand and learn for the development of new souls. So if in these other dimensions you have to create other beings or create other souls, other spirits that are connected to source, then where else would you go besides into a 3D world such as this, with the duality present and all of these different complications that you have to experience in life? Where else would you go besides here in order to understand as a spiritual being, understand right and wrong, understand morality, understand anger and frustrations, but at the same time love and gratitude? Where else would you go? I think it's a school, but it could be a learning in a sense of you made a mistake, so now you got to go do it. But maybe I don't know.
How do you become a star? What if it's only to figure out how to become stars? Which maybe the ancients had it right, and there is people that become stars, and it's not even ancient. There's schools of thought that still believe that. I think in Utah, Mormons, I think they believe either that or Latter-day Saints. They believe that.
Well, that guy John Smith, I think, is the guy that started that whole thing, right? Am I wrong there? The dude, he also did the same thing with the bowler hat, but he called it a peeping hat. He had a hat that he would look inside of, and that's what gave him his visions and et cetera, in order to extend the Mormon faith and to basically generate and create the Mormon faith and religion. He used a peeping hat. He looked inside his hat, he'd get his visions, and then, sorry, that was a little sidebar, but it goes back to the bowler hat from the English. John Smith went to, I think, Chicago, and then from Chicago he went out to Utah, broke apart from the sect or group that he was a part of there, I think in Chicago, if I'm not mistaken, it was Chicago. But it was somewhere, mid-east, northeast area. He was part of a group of a sect, and he broke free from that group and used his peeping hat to predict the future and to have all of his religious experiences, and everybody started following him, and he created the writings and religion based upon the bowler hat.
Yeah, people desperately want something to believe in, and they'll if you're showing off anything, especially a little bit of magic with a hat and a rabbit in the hat.
There's another great reference right there. It's a correlation. It definitely is.
Rabbit in the hat tricks. Well,
interesting.
This kind of goes back to the kingdom of heaven in a parable from Jesus. The kingdom of heaven is like, I'm going to paraphrase, is like a homeowner going into his store closet and bringing out old treasures as well as new, and that's what the kingdom of heaven is like. It's always showing us, and specifically people who have responsibility knew their obligation is, our obligation is to, if our obligation is to build riches in the kingdom of heaven, there's plenty of scripture in all religions on how to build up this type of karma, or how to build up this type of life. Do you want to be an angel that we can sense, that we can communicate with? Do you want to be a pillar in the kingdom of heaven and just allow everything to move through you and be able to move through the whole kingdom of the whole universe through stillness? Because all motion is balanced off of stillness. It has a fulcrum of stillness. All motion and all wave functions, there's an axis of stillness, and that stillness is what it's timeless. It's hollow. The whole thing is hollow. It's a hollow universe, and that axis that all the waves move on. It's like throwing a football. If you were to throw a football you have to have that perfect stillness axis of spin that's on a spinning fulcrum in order for it to go far and have a nice throw. That's a perfect example.
Right.
But back to our senses and sensing them and pulling them up with our skin and our other senses and hairs. They grab the wave, they suck in the wave. But where are our biophotons emitting from in the body?
That's a tough one there. I mean, I think that there's, we get down, it's that MEMS type issue where you try to run into spirituality versus the science of it all, not versus, but in congruence with the science of it all. The heart has a very similar neurological makeup and structure as the brain does. It shares, that heart-brain neuropath.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that when we talk about biophotons, it comes from, the piston engine type exercise that takes place within the heart and the brain, constantly going, constantly moving, constantly in perpetual motion, creating that energetic field. But it's also internally into the vacuum of the human body, sending that constant rhythmic flashes. And each rhythmic flash throughout the body is registering the signal of the DNA, which is then sending out all of the rest of the messages, but going to the receptors of the DNA inside of, at the micro level. But I'm absolutely putting this in a layman's term and screwing this all up. But that's where my, initial brain kind of goes to when it comes to trying to conceive this process that's taking place in the human body to emit biophotons, an energetic field around us. It has everything to do with the heart and the mind. I know we have the bacteria in the gut, and we have the intuition and things that come from the gut, but that I think is more of a causality. You have the understanding of things that are in place and running, and so your engine, that heart-mind relationship, then the gut is a driver for that, so to speak, like the fuel tank, which is exactly what it is. But so it's more about the piston between the heart and the brain in its rhythmic cycles, pumping out those biophotons, registering with the DNA, and then having the bow shot of the hair acting as both receptors and transmitters for that energetic field around them and outside of them to, both protect, warn, but also at the same time demonstrate to others vitality. So it's all, again, back around. It's the as above, so below. It's the cyclic loop. It's the Mandelbrot set. It's it's all of that back around, just represented in a human form.
And love spell too. When you see someone and it's love at first sight, your DNA is completely different immediately.
And so that goes
You're
again.
that other person's DNA is forever, and then usually love at first sight oftentimes stays together and gets married.
Right. So then that goes back to the question of initially, how much of that record of those activities, of all of what you just described. So like a tree ring, you cut down a tree and you can sit there and count the years of the tree. Is that the same way with a hair follicle? I know that they can test, drugs and things of substance inside of a hair follicle, but in a hair, can you detect the energetic disruptions? At what point did you have this take place? Can you do that? And if so, why? It's like, how is that karmic energy stored inside of the hair?
Well,
or how can we understand it? We know it's stored there. How can we properly define it and understand it?
Apparently, Bam, Viva La Bam from
Margera,
from Jackass.
Right, Bam Margera.
Bam Margarita. Yeah.
Sorry.
He got ordered to do weekly or monthly follicle hair tests. I mean, we already all know that the hair records everything. But I just wanted to point out that that's available now. That science is available, and he did.
Right.
But
that's for substances ingested and then excreted versus energetic fields externally.
Well, that's where the science would be, is in the hair follicle. Whoever's doing those hair follicle samples, there's what we're looking for would be maybe a chemical or something released during psychospiritual events or even.
There we go.
Then you could traces of what exactly.
Or could you just go with the rhythmic, see the resonance of the rhythmic, lack of better words, frequency from the heart-mind relationship changing, the alteration of the rhythm. You'd have to map out the rhythm of each individual first, get the baseline of the rhythm of the individual based upon all of their makeup. So go to, more of the chi, get the chi, map out the chi of the individual, get that baseline, but you have to first have a overarching human baseline from which to compare the individual's baseline. But once you've been able to map out the individual's baseline chi, you could then go back and pull a hair and relate it to what they are feeling now, what they have felt in the past, based upon if you're able to discover or understand the rhythms and what what comes out of in a record, so to speak, of the hair in the form of proteins, or how protein manufacturing is disrupted based upon the disruption of the energetic field. Sorry, I rambled for a second there, but that's where my head went.
I think that there's a way into the. I know that there's a narrow way into the kingdom through certain gates that have openings and certain angles with a certain pitch, and it would probably be associated with the hairs or the size of the hairs in the follicles, and being able to detect something, being able to detect reality on all scales through the size of the hairs of this. It would be directly proportional to the size of the animal, size of their hairs, placement of their hairs. I
agree there a little bit, maybe, but would that mean, because a minute ago you mentioned bears, and I got to thinking, I was like, well, my brain immediately went to where, does that mean a bear's just always going to be less conscious or more conscious than a rhinoceros, so to speak? Is it going to be more aware of its surroundings than something like a porcupine? Or is a porcupine going to be more aware of its surroundings because the size of these frickin' quills?
Porcupines don't have to care about their any other animals. They literally, you watch them in nature shows, and I like always bringing this to nature. Thank you for bringing it back. That's what naturalists, if you want to think from a naturalist perspective, with the examples that we already have before us, before you theorize trying to get to all these other places and Mars and stuff, learn from the creatures here. That's our beginning. That's.
Oh yeah, I agree with that 100%. We've warped and we've changed. We should have always gone by the calendar on the turtle shell versus the crap we're using today. But that's just my opinion.
It's probably not necessarily hairs, because the Umwelt, the complete different worldview of other creatures. Some creatures perceive their environment with electricity only. All they can see is with external fields. Their body is like the center of the external field. Like stingrays and rays and those type of animals. Where's the hair and the cilia? There's probably hair and cilia all over them, you know, and they probably, I don't know, who knows? But
see, are you saying that's an aqueous? See, we just the medium changed there though. See, that's a different subject, I think. The medium with which that creature exists changed.
Yeah.
So that's a different subject.
Receptors be? What would their sensory receptors be?
In an aqueous environment, it would be the current flow of they automatically are a subject to, especially jellyfish. They're more subject to the currents that are flowing within that medium. Damn, that's where it's at. So it's the current within the medium that everything's flowing. And so us as humans being exposed to a much less aqueous film or medium have to develop through the utilization of the DNA activation and hair and et cetera. Well, all we've been talking about have to further develop the connectivity to the medium with which we are present.
That's what you're expressing, is the field creating the form. If you follow what kind of current the animal or creature exists in, you can predict the shape of the creatures based off of the currents that they're in, because the field creates the form.
Or
like the shape of fish, how they stand.
Is it the other way around?
Right, standing wave.
Is it? No, you said a minute ago form versus function, or is it function versus form?
No, it's the field always creating all forms. The fields create the forms, not the forms creating the fields. But right. It works in unison once the form exists, because it has to work within the field and transform and mutate and work with. It's all plasma morphology on all layers.
Right. I get that.
That love at first sight is plasma morphology. That's chemistry. They like to say it's all chemistries to bring it all down to oxytocin release and all that type of thing. But it's more than just chemistry. It's electric. It's a bioelectrical. It's external. What I was talking about earlier with the size of the hairs being able to rotate in a certain diameter, only being able to rotate in a certain diameter. They're all different sizes. Take, for example, the back of your hand. There's hairs on the back of your hand, and they say that's one of the most sensitive parts in your body. But there's hairs on the eyes of flies. Their eyes are just filled with hair. When you zoom in on ants and eyes and stuff like that,
mm-hmm.
the size of the creature and the diameter of the size of the hair could be the sensory, how it builds its umwelt, its worldview, how it takes in information and exchanges information with its morphogenetic field. It's a collective morphogenetic field. Rupert Sheldrake just put out another talk, and he talks about how when you have birds do birds learn a certain thing in one city, they're more apt to learn that thing across the whole world, even if they don't travel. Same with rats. If you put a rat through a certain cage and it learns it and it becomes better at it, all the rats become better at it. Same with the humans. If there's golfers nowadays that aren't even in competitions that are better than Tiger Woods, and the competition keeps getting higher and higher and higher. Better athletes, better and better and better. That's Olympian. That's the Olympian idea and mentality and thought is based off of what's possible. Nobody thought that it was possible to run a 4-minute mile until someone.
Yeah, I was about to use that as another example.
Yeah, that's morphogenetic fields. We're showing what's possible. That's the purpose of humans, really. is to show other humans what's possible. Buddha showed other humans, Jesus showed other humans, you have to have a bridge. Before, we thought there was no bridge to God. We needed, because we're so sinful. We're still so sinful. We don't believe there's a bridge to God. Half of us don't believe we could get in the kingdom, so we'd rather just play with the dark arts. Whereas there is a way, and some of us needed to know that there was a way, which Jesus provides that way. And on that way, you have to prove that you conquered death. There's a conquering of death, and that fear of death, of overcoming death, is one of the greatest ideas that's ever been invented, where you don't have fear of death anymore, where your sins and your bad deeds are forgiven. So you can walk around with your shoulders high and feel forgiven and feel like that's a grace, feel like that's a beautiful thing. Walk around and help out others feel better with a grateful mentality and a mind set on gratitude and thankfulness. That person is extremely dangerous as a disruptive agent in the world, because that's dangerous. And I mean, as far as wow, how much beautiful good deeds that could do and unfold. And oftentimes, like people who are working with God and working with the light are sought after and taken out because other people, opposing forces, don't want light in the world. They don't want good things. If I were to start the future is electric and do food and freeze-dried food and show people how much benefit this is for humanity, I'd be a red flag, because they don't. There's people who want to decrease the population, and those are the people that are running things. They don't want good ideas to help people, to help humanity.
Yeah, see, that's another thing, man. I've had some personal experience with what you're talking about out there in my own life. And it just, to me, it goes back to, the argument of, the secret society, so to speak, having control of this narrative, but then also setting parameters with which that narrative can be set forth. And then as a individual, like a Freemason as an individual always claims it's all about you and your outlook and how individually, how you perceive life and these type things. But at the same time, they run and hide and cower behind the collective strength of their organizations to guide and set those parameters utilizing the dark, doing it in secrecy. So I think if we are to come to humanity as a whole, come to a collective, I guess, growth pattern or more collective growth, we have to do away with all of these secret societies. You have to eliminate, and that's happened, I think, through the social media.
That's why they do it.
What's that?
Secrecy is safe. That's why they do it. They do it under the guise of security threat. Let's keep everyone safe. Let's hide this idea or that idea from people. So they ultimately, they don't want things. People are afraid of change. There's a lot of money. And that's
that's controlling the currency, the medium, the currency of the flow of the currency of the medium with which we exist. They dictated the medium of exchange being money, then controlled that, like a bank is a river. It's like it's the side of a river. It controls the flow of a river. That's why they call them banks. So it's like we sit here and have these discussions and arguments, and not arguments, but discussions, and try to make sense of the reality around us. But yet at the same time, there's a collective group that already have a very strong understanding of a lot of this, that have been, I think, dictating and controlling the ebb, tide, and flow of humanity. And that is what has caused us in multiple times throughout history to be have results of catastrophic events, to have the catastrophic events that we've had on a global scale that's been documented well through whatever kind of means, but it's the catastrophic events that have almost reset the population back down to zero, because the refusal of certain groups to properly educate and properly guide humanity through its course. That's my take on it. That's just my opinion on it. And until that stops, we're all going to be subject to catastrophic events across this planet until the individuals holding the keys, so to speak, is a great term, I think, literally holding the key, until they stop restricting the flow, then humanity will never reach its full potential, and et cetera, et cetera. The 100 monkey rule, the morphogenic field being as it is, it's just going to continuously be restricted by the flow of these, there's no other word for it, but greedy and power hungry individuals that refuse and then cower behind the concept and strong arm argument of safety, like you said.
Yeah.
They cower behind that, saying, "Oh, it's just safety because individuals are smart, but people are stupid." Well, people are stupid because the morphogenic field has not been able to be released. And I'm not going to sit here and say I know better or I know worse. I'm just saying that it can't continue this way. Period. That's all I do know.
I don't think that any. I mean, there's always book burning. That's what it's been. Burn the witches, burn the books, create an enemy, and destroy all the enemies. The history of anytime anyone overtakes the village, they destroy the history. They destroy the lineage. They destroy the DNA, and they make their own DNA, and they make up their own rules. It's never going to stop. It's part of the hierarchy of being what's it called, an apex predator.
If you look at the flow, if you look at the trend, sorry,
I don't think it's as controlled as you think, as you believe. I think it's been controlled the entire time, but I don't think they understand the implications of their control, because every time you control something, there's a whole magnitude of orders of everything. It changes the future of everything constantly, always.
Bipolar.
All of our actions.
A dipole. It's dipolar.
So, I mean, even knowing this information now, knowing we've known this information before, what are we going to do with it? It comes down to, what are you going to do with it?
Well, like Morgan Freeman said in that movie, I forgot the name of the movie, but with Scarlett Johansson, his answer to that question was, pass it on.
Are you going to build a drone? Are you going to build a computer? Are you going to, are you going to advance technology? Are you going to use it for your own? Are you going to say you came up with the science? I mean, what are we all going to do with this? Ultimately, they hush figures out of existence, and all history is rewritten constantly, and people believe they're rewritten, like the gay Bible. It's all.
Well, I think that goes back to the what you said earlier with. I lost my train of thought there, but it's the parameters being established by individuals, in my mind, with nefarious agendas and trying to control the ebb and tide of the development of the actual human species.
Yeah, they kill him. They killed Leonardo Bruno. They killed Jesus. They killed all of Jesus' apostles. They were all martyred. Martyring and creating martyrdom is oftentimes more dangerous than killing the person and letting them become a martyr. They were worried about that with Waco, Texas, and killing the guy. They were afraid of making him a martyr. He didn't become a martyr. Yeah, Ruby Ridge was another one. The Michigan militia, destroying the Michigan militia on purpose because it was the last resistance against the United States government. That happened 1995, and then in the 90s. Now it's all associated and tied directly with the government. There is no secret Michigan militia. These secret orders that stand up against tyranny for freedom, the last bastions have been destroyed and incorporated into. I mean, you saw 14 people out of like 16 people were FBI that tried to kill Whitmer. They're all FBI. All these organizations, everything, music, the whoever's the popular celebrity is only allowed to get there by subterfuge, you know,
yeah, or being compromised.
Yeah,
it's where they can be controlled. And so whenever we have these conversations, man, I don't want to get into a state of despair, but it's almost like as if spitting into the ocean, trying to make it the level rise is the example I always use. It's
well, I think one person can make such a huge difference in the world, and I already know that. And it takes being able to be alone and being happy being alone to get to these places, because it takes the introvert to do the designs and create the time and the network to take the time to explain to the rest of us, the Galileo, the people that sit inside and write books and ponder on these things and constantly study, and or just the polymath that's tuned in or that has a message from the sun, a solar flare, where it changes the person's DNA instantaneously during a solar flare and makes them become something that they never thought they would become.
I can say from personal experience that just my facial features themselves in the past 7 years through, or I say 7, more like 3. So during the past 3 years has gone from being, immediately I could see a change based upon my diet and the chubbiness in my cheeks, the roundness of my face, to now where it's just more streamlined. My face has changed. There has been a almost one-for-one causation through the understanding and the awakening process, or whatever the level of understandings individuals go through that unlock these certain portions of your DNA to be receptors. Then once that does occur, it's irreversible in my mind. You can go and have I don't know, remittance, I don't know, go down. You could go back to having a poor diet. You can go back to believing the things and just refusing and going into the realm of blasphemy. I think you talked about blasphemy and your views on that before. It's understanding certain levels of understanding of the spirit and the force, and then refusing to acknowledge it. That also, you could have that. But even with that, I've tested this theory out myself personally. My physical features didn't go back to the way they were. They just didn't.
Yeah.
So I think once it's there, once it's unlocked, you can't necessarily go back. You can just refuse to acknowledge.
Yeah. The closest I've ever been to God, I was working with the storm, and I made a vortex, and I pointed at the vortex and said, "I'm doing that." And right when I said I'm doing that and showed my friend, my fiance at the time, she did a painting of it. Lightning struck right where I was pointing, and there was no storm, there was no anything, and I immediately started. My face started convulsing, and my pinky started convulsing. And I kept walking and tried to walk it off. And I'm like, I'm only man. I'm only man. All I could repeat is, I'm only man. I'm like, and I knew I was working with God. And that's the closest to source I've been, you know, any longer, and I would have been called up. And
yeah, I could see that.
It's like I've had so many experiences. They're all different, and they're all very visceral and real experiences, and they transform your body. And you have to go from transformation to transformation, from glory to glory. That's what going from glory to glory is. And you can only go from glory to glory by overcoming. And you know what you're supposed to overcome. Everyone knows what they're supposed to overcome. And when they overcome what they're supposed to stop doing or supposed to be doing differently, it creates new neural patterns, new pathways, new existence, new possibilities, new realities, and also reminds you of what you need to overcome next. Because every time you overcome something, there's something else that you need to overcome after that that's already there that you don't even know is there. And the more you overcome, the more you are invited to the rewards and the gifts here on Earth and in the afterlife of sanctification, becoming more and more like God here on Earth. And the purpose of heaven in Christianity is to know God more and more and more. The entire time you spend an eternity learning and knowing God. That's how unknowable God is. So that's what I like to chase and try to understand, is knowing God. That's why a lot of mathematicians say that God is a mathematician, because they want to be closest to saying that they know God. And it really comes down to that. Well, how's your relationship with God? How's your relationship with Spirit? How's your relationship with Source? Is your heart open and softened? How many times have you cried today in exaltation and asked for things in open crying aloud? You know, like, how much are you playing with the ether? Where's the end of the extent? There isn't an end to the extent. It's a beautiful life that we live in, and we can work with hand in hand with, you know, like Russell's book, working with God. God will work with you, but not for you. Work with the sources, work with the source, the one. That they call it one, but we're actually one. We're actually one,
right. And
all the other numbers. And source is zero. It's cipher. I think it's a hollow universe, and it's all lenticular, building lenses stacking and lenses overlapping, which is spherical pressures and spherical pressure gradients building the lenses. I see because I see through lenses. I know because I bend the lenses, and the lenses bend to our will. Our will is equal to charge potential in a circuit. Charge and will is very similar. It's what powers the creature. Your will to live, your will to will things into manifestation. And that's faith. Faith gives you the evidence.
Heavy, man. It's so heavy.
Faith gives you the eyeballs. Faith gives you the evidence of things not yet seen. How do you get there to have the evidence in your hand of things not yet seen, like the Dougherty set is? That's the gift that I was given when I asked God, right. When the 7 drawings came to me, I asked God to guide me to holiness, and God gave me faith. And faith is the evidence of things not yet seen. You can keep showing everybody and explain it mathematically, scientifically, biologically, through all of the through all the disciplines in an interdisciplinary manner. But when are we going to pick it up and do something with it? When are we going to manifest these potentials, and how is it going to evolve the direct correlation with cybernetics? Cybernetics is the connection of the brain, electricity, and computing. Cybernetics is huge, and it's the future field. You know, this is where we're going. This is literally, I'm sketching the current that we're going to be surfing on in the future.
Right.
And it's a blessing for me to be able to continue to effulge these foliations of light layer by layer and be able to be descript with my hypothesis and what different things are and different mechanisms, like the mechanism that breaks. There's a certain point and mechanism that breaks down in every field, that breaks it down, that allows all reality to be broken down into 2 dimensions. So the third dimension breaking into 2 dimensions, all of it as a record on a bubble on a film, and that's the Schwarzschild radius.
Mm-hmm.
So predicted Schwarzschild radius, which would be like the Bauschock Schwarzschild radius. It's all the information of everything on a bubble, on a soap film, compact. And I think there's a mechanism in a way that moves through every single wave that I've shown, and I can show how this opens and closes like an accordion style type of breaking down from one dimension to the next. You don't need 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 dimensions. The whole thing can be a projection that's based off of just the Schwarzschild radius.
Right.
And every wave has a Schwarzschild radius of itself. And that interacts with every other wave. I don't know what to call it. I'd call it a Schwarzschild radius because it acts in similar ways and like holds the information and takes the information from one cycle and brings it to the next.
I think along the similar lines of that let's say we're living in a sea of frequencies, different frequencies flying around, every frequency you can think of. Now, if we think of something, let's say a rose, a lady you like, it might put out a particular vibration. Now, that vibration will be recognised not only by other people as well. And because other people might have the same vibration. Now, when that vibration is resonant with what it's interacting with, it increases, and that can be at any octave really. And so we're starting to resonate with these through a series of let's say spherical shells and different frequencies are resonated certain distances, or in, I don't know what the actual medium of the wave is. It is probably the neutrino, but however. It seems like certain resonances, certain vibrations in this world can filter through different fractal layers, maybe dimensions even, onto the other scales. But then also there's one scale which as these contains like the platonic forms, what a shape is meant to be. Or, there's it's an idealized, or maybe a simplified, way of looking at these platonic forms. But whatever way it is, this information is massively fractally compressed, and so that at our level, it has to be unfolded as it goes through to the macro level, and then folded to get back to us.
Dynamic. It's dynamic.
If we look at
that's right. So I think on those lines, I am interested in this, in looking at these how these morphogenic fields how they radiate for one thing, and under what circumstances, because it seems to happen under different brain states as well, Is that your dream state, the imaginary dream state, which I think Sheldrake suspects that, and that somehow we pick up on the resonances of nearby dreamers, and then project them out ourselves.
Well, if you take what you're talking about and you add to it the idea and the fact that that the sizes of the planets are exact ratio of the sizes of our different states of our brain waves, theta, alpha, beta. Does that mean that our thoughts are going back and forth and bouncing off of these planets?
If they are, this is exactly what Rupert Sheldrake is. What Rudolf Steiner is describing with his planetary consciousness, cosmic consciousnesses, and I think that's exactly what you were just talking about there. And so that's something that I've got to look into very quickly.
So then it goes back to birth. It has to go back to the birth at the time of conception or into manifestation of an individual into this world.
It's part of that matrix. We don't know how important that is. It's certainly part of that matrix.
It has, yeah, because you have to look at it from a planetary alignment, providing these signals, so to speak, at the time of conception. I mean, of course, there's going to be interference and retard potential taking place based upon the host. With the mothers, their anatomy and their makeup, but at the time of birth, the date of birth, the position of birth, the location of birth, all of these things based upon the planetary alignment signals coming in.
Well, that's what makes the magi, because the magi knew. Magi, the three magi that went to go search for Christ.
Right.
All of the Pharisees, who were the smartest people in the world, the religious folks, what they claimed, the religious folk. They didn't even know in their scripture when Jesus was supposed to come or when the Lord was supposed to come. And the Lord was prognosticated to come to the earth, more so now than ever in all religions. That builds the anticipatory morphic field for these creatures to manifest. We hope that something happens and comes into existence, like faith, the evidence of things not yet seen. We make it happen through our prophecies. And who follows the people who pull the information out of a hat? Everyone follows the religions of people who make prognostications. They're called prophets. People have called me prophet. People have called me. I could go on and on and on about what people say about me. And I just let it all just go. I'm none of that. Yeah. There's no labels for what I'm doing. I could make predictions to the nth extent. There's so many predictions. The predictive analytics is endless. So, what are we going to do?
Had a servant following him around, always saying, "You're just a man. You're just a man. You're just a man."
Seriously?
Yeah. There's I don't know if it's folklore or if it's true, but it's known that he had an individual servant following him around all the time when he walked through the crowds, saying that over and over and over. Because when you told me your story a second ago, that's the first thing that popped into my head. Was Julius Caesar had a servant that followed him around saying, "Hey, you're just a man. You're just a man. You're just a man."
I think you need one, buddy.
But I mean, we look at the, like you said,
the take over.
The contributions to the morphogenic field in itself. If we look at what Nicholas was saying a second ago, and you look at like Maxwell, Faraday, Gauss, you have all of these guys that contributed, Amphitheater. You have all these guys that contributed in astronomical means and ways to the understanding of that morphogenetic field. You have all of them sitting there contributing to this in multiple ways and multiple levels, but just not being able to tie it all together. That's the key. I think that's the key, is just tying it all together.
Well, that's why I don't believe that you should give so much credence and credit to the dark societies and philosophies of the world, because they don't know either. They're waiting for me or you or someone to come upon new information always. It's about always becoming new. not necessarily hiding the information so much anymore because we're in an information age. There's an information war, that's for sure. We're awakening in many different dimensions, but nobody really has it fully figured out. You know, there's just too much. There's just too much, and it's always usually the artist throughout history. Why do you? I've been saying this for a long time, and then I see everybody doing the same exact result. I'm an artist, okay? I'm a life artist, and I do art because also when I was trying to create the Dougherty set ahead of time, I was trying to create the greatest. I'm similar to Picasso in that I realized I could sketch anything at a young age, and you're like, what's going to be worth my time to work on, right? The greatest art piece is what I was trying to create. And then it happened, and that's the Dougherty set. And it happened also through intentions. You know, it wasn't just like boom, bam, there it is, you know. And what I realized is I wanted to start burying scrolls all around the world with the Dougherty set and information in it and encoded and blah, 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 blah. Because I realized that the only thing that becomes priceless, the only things that become priceless is artifacts, human art, and sometimes precious jewels. And very
I think
rare.
there's a huge thing to be said about an individual being able to, like what you're doing, is putting the messages and the understandings into an eloquent manner, and into, even if it's not even if, but through art, through music, or even just through the use of language and expression of thought properly. I think there's a huge thing to be said for that. I really do. I think that's the finger of God.
Thank you. It's what I'm doing is I'm going to, and I've been doing, and I have a lot of songs already done and written, is I'm going to be doing this and releasing it through music. I'm going to be doing and releasing this through geometry, through technology, through a lot of different means, through children's books, through think of the things that transform people the most. It's books, man. Books and art, and
it has been.
Well, this is the reason why Jim Carrey and George Bush are painting paintings now, because they want to have some of this timeless appreciation of their artwork to constantly go up in value. Constantly go up in value. NFTs are about that same idea, is taking something and creating value out of paint, value out of creating money out of thin air, with a little bit of creativity.
Well, it's the expression of the internal to the external.
So I started something based on this idea called geocaching art, geocachingart.com. I own this domain, and it's to hide art all over the world, and that's it. And people go and geocache it.
There's a great artist, I'm sure you're probably familiar with him already.
But Banksy.
No, Alex Gray.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does a lot of the cover for the Tool albums.
The
covers there. He works with Maynard and all those guys for the.
Yep. The first time I met him was in 2006.
Oh, you met Alex Gray?
Yeah, and then I went to his house a few different times and painted with him.
The Chapel of Sacred Mirrors.
Yeah, in Wappinger Falls, New York.
I definitely want to get up there. I wanted to see it. I haven't had a chance, but he's one of my.
Yeah,
I shared that with even my daughter, because she was talking about being an artist. I said, okay, well, here's a great, example of someone to go by, and I shared him with.
Yeah, yeah. His modern day art church is incredible. Just been needed forever, and yeah. Love them to death.
Amazing, just amazing. It's just amazing the times we live right now, I have to say.
Yeah, best art that's ever been created, best everything, best time to possibly live. We have the best of everything, the least amount of crime, the least amount of teen pregnancy, the least amount of everything. You tell me something, and I'll tell you we've never had it better. And so many of us are talking about negative things that are going on. It's because we have that propensity. We don't take the time to smell the roses, and that's what it's all about. It's taking time to be appreciative.
There was a quote by Robin Williams. He said, before he died, he did a kind of video, and he's basically saying, they tell you to smell the roses and wait for the sweet stuff, but then they hit you in the ear with a pickaxe, and it's almost, I think, in a lot of ways, I agree with what you're saying. We do focus more on the negative, but I think that's a causality more than it is a propensity.
Well, it's also what I mean by defense mechanism. You want to bring the attention to other people. We focus on it so we can stop it, so we can thwart it. Like, oh my gosh, look what someone's doing in the village. Like, shame on them, and then they ostracize them, and then they're banned, like nowadays. But the people that are doing the shame on this person is because they're a patriot nowadays. Shame on this person because they believe in the freedom. Shame on this person. So the people that are getting shamed are the ones that are getting kicked off and deplatformed.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think at the same time, there seems to
right
be
is wrong and what is wrong is right. It's inverted. It's always happened. Happens in every culture. It's towards the declivity of the culture.
I think that there's, to me, I can feel, I don't know this for sure, and I'm talking sideways out of my ass, to be honest with you, but I can sense almost that there's been a agenda, or at least a motif behind it becoming so obvious by the deplatforming of individuals, by the not being held accountable to just modern, everyday, basic decency, not being held accountable for crimes, not being held accountable for creating victims and damaging people's lives, all of this stuff. And like you said, there's this mentality of even if you point it out, you're being negative. And I just don't understand that. And I've had the hardest time battling with that issue itself, the love and light crowd, where everything has to be love, everything has to be light. I'm like, yeah, we will get there, but we're not there yet. That's the main thing that I kind of battle with the most, is we're just in a society where you can sit here and say love and light and pretend that all of these bad things are happening, not happening around us, and hope they just go away. I don't understand that. You're not, are you not supposed to pick up the shield and the sword? Are you not supposed to go pick up the stones out of the brook to slay the giant? I mean, what is it that we're not and are supposed to do? That's the biggest and hardest battle that I personally have faced here recently throughout the last few years.
Nobody wants to be deplatformed because a lot of people make their money on the platform, right? A lot of people do, especially the main people, main characters and main players right now are all the TikTokers, YouTubers. There's a generation of people getting rich off of this. And so you don't want to be platformed. So that's the don't do this or we'll pull the plug. And that's also the 501c3 connected to religious entities. Don't say this or we'll stop your government funds, or we won't let you be a 501c3 anymore. So all of the churches are becoming lukewarm because they're telling them, hey, you can't talk about this, you can't talk about this. Oh, by the way, you also need to be inclusive, otherwise the 501c3 stops, which is what made the Presbyterians fold and collapse into the homosexual reality that we live in right now. They had to do it. They had to acquiesce because of the funding. And I loved Presbyterian churches, one of my favorite home churches. If that's even the one that told me to burn the drawings. But
my brother's actually a pastor, Presbyterian.
I love Presbyterian. You have to be a doctor to be in the pulpit. Amen. You should be.
Yeah.
That's one of the stipulations, and they constantly teach the crowd new words every week, new words, all sorts of great. It's like very doctoral. I love it. It's dactyloquent.
Yeah, I had experience with what you're talking about when it came to the 503. I mean, his sermons and everything was dictated by a group of gentlemen at a remote location. So his sermons had to be pre-approved, and I immediately related that back to the imams throughout the Middle East that I was, I witnessed. Every church, every mosque has to have a pre-approved sermon. Now they broadcast their sermons over the loudspeakers every Friday, so they have the call to prayer takes place 4 times a day every day, but on Fridays the sermons for each mosque are broadcast over the loudspeaker. But before those they have to go through the Matawa, the religious police, the religious sects there inside of the country, prior to being able to be announced over the loudspeakers of the mosques. And I related that back to my brother. I was like, man, how can you justify that? I mean, I don't understand the justification there. How can you keep sending your sermon? Because I would work with him and talk with him, and we'd lift weights in the morning and discuss different aspects of a sermon and what he's going to preach on that coming Sunday. And he was like, yeah, I got to get this done before Wednesday because I got to get approved. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I was like,
it's actually gorgeous, and it makes perfect sense because it's fractal. The more people hear the same message, the more radiance and the more resonance and sympathetic resonance. Everybody vibrates the same thought that week, the same messages, similar prayers. The Catholic Church, they all do the same sermon on the same different sermons on the same subject every week. It's gorgeous and fractal, and the thoughts should be like that. But unfortunately, that's how you build mass hysteria and what is it? Mind, whatever. How you control
something to think. It's speak, think.
How you build mass control. You build mass control by that, and mass.
Well, that goes to the Bernays methodology of propaganda, almost in my mind. It's like, wait a minute here. We're going to control the masses based upon a collective thing. And again, that goes back to what I was saying. It's a
What is it bad?
It's parameters. It's parameters being established. So how can we sit here and say that we truly have free will whenever there's a constant state of parameters being established by a group of unknown elites? And I hate to use the word elite, and I shouldn't do that, but a group controlling parameters of that free will, but then claiming, oh no, you got free will, you can choose to be a part of it or not. Well, if I choose not to, then I have all of these consequences of that. And that's just as uncharacteristic to the human state as me accepting these parameters. And that's just as I don't want to be in a state of homelessness. I don't want to be in a state of, poverty. I don't want to be in a state of not being able to fit into society, but yet you have dictated the parameters of my free will very clearly and very, definitively. So that's not free will. It's a fallacy of an argument as far as I'm concerned when it comes to the concept of determinism versus free will.
Well, unfortunately, one of the demarcations of a thriving civilization is welfare. Welfare. When a civilization is thriving, they have enough money to support the poor, the needy, everybody, foreigners, and that's a weird thing that you don't necessarily associate with each other. And think of all the good that came out of the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is a beautiful, gorgeous thing. If you think about the advancement of all of society together, it's allowed everything to explode and allowed everything to fruit and have this surplus of money that they constantly print out of thin air. Sure, it messed up a lot of cultures around the world, but it also gave a lot of cultures around the world wealth. So even though we're the great Satan and we have bases in every single country and more, pretty much, naval bases and army bases, trying to democratize and force democratization on other people is it's still like colonialism, but it's advancing a lot of people, and it's advancing people at rates that, you know, there's a lot of beauty that's coming out of it, even though there's bad things. We would have never.
Somebody said a meme. Somebody posted a meme, and I know your thoughts on meme warfare and the degradation of our society when it comes to memes. But it said, you know, democracy is ruled by the majority, and the next, you know, below it was, yeah, but so is gang rape. You know, and that's a true statement. As much as it hurts to say that, it's a true statement.
Democracy means ruled by the people.
Yeah, ruled by the people, or majority rule.
Oh,
the majority.
Oh, I get it.
Majorities.
You know, but yeah, so is gang rape. You know.
Oh,
and that was hard to argue against that. It really is.
yeah.
You know. It's like, yeah, you're right. You know, it's like you know, I don't know. Anyway, but
that's a weird one.
Yeah, but it's hard to argue against that sentimentality, where the rule of the people, yeah, that's what the people want. Okay, great. But you know, it, like you said, it also created a massive amount of negativity and a massive amount of negative things as well. So that's just my thoughts on it. I'm not saying communism's right. I'm not saying democracy's right. I'm not saying colonialism's right. I'm not saying any of them are wrong either. I'm saying it's easy for us to look back now with hindsight and say those things, but it also, you know.
Well, we must civilize these brutes. Someone give that brute over there a spoon and a fork. Teach him some manners.
Well, I mean, that's the thing.
You know, and if Biden is a continual improvement as far as democracy goes, then I don't think democracy is going to last for another 2 years. Now, well, if it is democratic that he's even a president.
Right, and I think that's what I was saying a minute ago. By there seems to be some form of an agenda to deliberately point out to the people the failures of this entire system or whatever. I think that there's an agenda there to point this out in a deliberate way, almost in a comical way. I mean, that guy, come on, let's all face it, that's not the same guy that was there in the 70s. It's just not the same dude. It's some dude playing a dude, dressed as a dude.
Well, personally, seemed like a good idea for a lot of people. 81 million people to vote him in, apparently. So maybe they ought to shoulder some of the blame, really, as far as I can see.
Yeah, I was, you know, if you look at Afghanistan as a great example of the voting process and the systems that are currently used, they tested it out in Afghanistan. The whole purple finger thing, you know, it was all an illusion, but you had all of these government contractors that went through Afghanistan. They allowed the Afghanistan people to vote. They set up the systems, the voting machines and the systems, and they tested out all the bugs. They tested out all the algorithmic issues, and then they released it upon the United States. That's my personal experience with that concept.
Yeah. FBI,
so I don't know.
FBI tested it out somewhere and then released the system.
Yeah, and I don't think so. Going back to the voting thing, I don't think that the voting even anymore. I think that part of this whole agenda is to demonstrate to the people that the voting mechanisms also have been corrupted.
They still don't check ID.
Well, they need claiming back, don't they? They need claiming back and using it in the spirit that they were developed in the first place. You know, you've got judges putting through laws, unprecedented laws. You've got politically appointed judges all over the place.
Yeah.
And then there are these government departments who seem to be fairly unaccountable. You know, so you've got a deep state running. There's trillions of pounds up in the air, and it's all for the taxpayers' interest. And very little of it is. I mean, at the end of the day, government's just getting bigger and bigger, and it's eating every other kind of institution.
Yeah, and I think with that, we're experiencing the ramifications of big governments. I mean, you've had politicians in the United States for a long while, since I think, before even Ross Perot. But you had, let's say, Ross Perot is a great example of trying his best to demonstrate, hey, everybody, this is bad. This is going to be bad. And we are now living in that time where government has gotten to a monopolistic overreach, and it's fragmented, in my mind, it's fragmented into multiple power structures that are now currently battling for supremacy, because the way the United States goes, the rest of the world seems to flow. And I don't know if that's because of the media. I don't know if that's because of the new world. I don't know what the reasoning of the position on the ley lines. I don't know why the energetic powers of the United States are what they are, but it is. It just is. And so I think that's been harnessed and utilized for the detriment and control of the global population for a long time. But I feel that we are now coming back around full circle where that power has been, I guess, it's come back around full circle. And we are living in that times. And everybody always.
The full circle is the globe, and that's the globalist. And now it's a global entity, and now it's becoming more and more so. And the globalists are the true bad guys, because they believe one world government, one world religion, one world language, unification of everything. And I don't think that's necessarily the best, because I think diversity is biodiversity shows us that you create a monoculture if you do something like that.
Yeah, and that would lead to basically Carl Jung's kind of view on reality, in that sense, where you just have a constant state of stagnation. And you would, but in that constant state of stagnation, you would have no outliers. If you create systems that eliminate outliers, and not only eliminate it, but demonize them almost, you demonize any outliers, then in that state, you'll have nothing but a constant flow of stagnation, which is great because the general populace remains in stagnation, whereas the monopoly men or the elite or the ones that view themselves above having to answer to anyone, they continue to live their life in whichever manner they see fit, and their bloodlines continue to, have, like, you have 3 children and one of them has this propensity, one has this propensity, one has that one, so they can promote that child this way, that way, or this way throughout their abilities and their freedoms that have no parameters, because they have no banks, so to speak, of a river to guide them. They're outside, they're on the shore of that current sea. And so they have the abilities to do whatever they choose to do or don't do, whereas the rest of the global population are stuck inside of this constant state of stagnation. I think that's the ultimate goal of the WEF and these globalists, is to create this mentality and this overreaching sense of unity. They want to say, hey, we're all one, we're all unity, and they're hijacking the concept of God's creation and the basic they're hijacking that, and that sentimentality, that concept of we all come from God. They're using that and distorting that to try to make everyone see that they all need to be and act the same way in order to maintain that level of control, while at the same time they get to exist outside of that bubble.
And that's religion, and that's Christianity also.
Yes.
That's rules for thee, but not for me.
Well, you look at the global, the big, huge preachers of the big mega churches, and you see that as a perfect example right there. On a regular basis.
Yeah, you get real sick of preachers. It's the last thing I want to listen to, some fucking preacher, to be honest.
Right.
And that's it. I think, like I say, you make your own communion with God. I won't want to sit in an hall and someone bloody telling me when I've got to pray and what I've got to say and what I've got to, feel. And
Yeah,
no, I
the
don't like.
ritualistic nature of religion is where I kind of get totally thrown out and not almost disgusted with it. The sit down, stand up, turn around 3 times. We have to sing twice. We're going to pray twice. Now we're going to sing again. Now everybody sit down. I'll stand up again. Come up here and take this little shot of, grape juice and eat a cracker. All of the ritualistic aspects that take place behind religion, I think, have been uh,
If they weren't there, we
That's
used
all
against
part of
if
us.
they
the
weren't
artistic
if they weren't
expression.
there, we would.
Simple as that. That's
If,
part of,
yeah,
that's part of the artistic expression in the service. They developed it so everyone stood there. You're not allowed to smile. You just got your normal clothes on. You're not allowed to dance or move around. You've got to in a very controlled bloody environment, and
Yeah,
it's the control that the preacher wants. He wants to set up to take you where he probably wants to take you.
yeah.
So
I can
that's the
say
way
this,
people
man.
pray.
I spent
I mean,
almost a
let people pray however they want, as far as I'm concerned. I've got nothing against whatever way anyone wants to do it. I don't give a shit. Let them
I
do what they want to do. I hate people making laws for that I'm meant to abide by. That's
yeah,
another thing. It pisses me off when people say, "Oh, he shouldn't be doing that," or "He should be doing this," or "He shouldn't be doing that." What the
judgmental.
fucking hell business is it of another person? Get your own life in order, and then start thinking about everyone else.
I
What
know
they
this. I
have.
spent almost a full year helping my brother, being a part of everything, running errands, waking up at 4 a.m. to go set up things and chairs and, being a part of that community that was his church. Only after like a year's time, they started a new members class or whatever there, and I was helping him with, I had to go pick up the books for printing of this thing, whatever. And I turned to him and I said, "So why would I not be able to be a member of your church? This is weird. I didn't understand. I was like, I've done more for this church than any of these individuals that are currently sitting in this class. Hand over fist more. And it was because of the disagreement with the rituals that I would never be able to be a member of his church. I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? I have been more of a quote unquote member of this church than any person sitting in this class. But yet none of that accounted for anything because I didn't agree with the rituals which they followed. And that I was like, okay, well, and so needless to say, my brother and I are not on the best of terms these days.
yeah, that's the thing. We could church bash all day. I could tell you all the reasons why I don't like all sorts of different churches, and I'll just mention one reason is the Solomon Foundation, where you can give money, and the more you give, the more money you get back, and it's all 501c3 tax return. It's been like that for a while, but you can actually make money off of giving money to the churches through the Solomon Foundation, and those are the ones. Those are the neo churches. Any church that starts in a high school or a middle school around you and grows exponentially, and you're wondering why this community center all of a sudden is in my city, that's the Solomon Foundation. But it does great things.
Used a Shriners hall for his first kind of preliminary setup for the church, and then grew from there. But all of the contributors, everybody that gave money, they were all oil and gas. They were all giving, monthly stipends, monthly money, and then at the, end of the year, it would all be tax deductible. And you're like, see, they're making money, and it would be for the sake of reducing their tax liability to the money that they had made off the oil and gas industry. But they were giving all this money just for the tax benefits of it, not because they cared. I mean, I'm sure there was a portion where they cared because they got to determine or dictate who they actually gave this money to. But I was doing the books and helping him kind of process some of the financing for these things. I'm just like, man, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. It's a shame because they would all need receipts for each month.
Yeah. when my parents started getting bills from the church, I'm like, Mom, what's going on? Like, yeah, we owe the church this much money, and every week going in and volunteering, and on top of tithing, they expect you to make donate a certain amount every week because of tithing. Like, seriously, they send you a bill? Like,
yeah,
for last week. Like, what?
I grew up in a single income family with my mom. She was a single mom with 3 boys, so you can imagine the financial struggle that she had there in the United States for that. But we don't understand really what poor is here in the U.S. But my understanding and my parameters of what poor was as a child, we were poor. And still, I remember to this day picking up a check that was sitting there on the thing, and it was to the church. That had just built a $1.8 million building, but the check was to the church for like over $300. And I'm like, but Mom, I asked you last week for this or that or this, and I was a young child. But that whole entire concept of, wait a minute, you're going to write a check to these people for $300 and something, and yet we can't even hardly afford the basic necessities around this house.
That's what makes community, though. That is what builds community, and giving. And the poorest people are the biggest givers. The poorest people in the world give the most. That's just a fact. Philanthropy isn't considered giving because they're benefiting and cycling back into their own companies. But yeah, giving is electric. Giving is something that mostly poor people who know what it's like to be poor do. And also the poorest people smoke cigarettes too. So what does that tell you?
I just think that giving money to these mega churches or giving money to the individual institutions like we've been discussing with the 503c capabilities and all that, giving money to those institutions just so that the people that come there each week don't have to walk through mud in order to get to the building, or they get to have this huge, massive structure with the orchestras and all these things to have these state-of-the-art facilities sitting there to be utilized once a week instead of taking that money and giving it properly to the community. That's where I have a problem. That's the issues that I have. This money's going in to build more facilities for that institution and not necessarily back into the community like it should be. It's used.
Yeah, I grew up. I grew up and live in a community where there's no homeless shelters and there's a big homeless population, and they just send the people out of the Livingston County Jail into the wild, and it's like they need. So I've worked with many different organizations trying to help create a homeless shelter here in Livingston County, and I've worked with all sorts of different organizations for food kitchens and to create my own type of very similar thing to what Craig's book, Craig's Facebook Marketplace. I was creating something like Facebook Marketplace where people could trade things and barter. And I'll do your roof if you. I'm a roofer. I'll do your roof if you do my deck. Like I'll paint your house if you.
Yeah, I think that's great.
So this type of thing needs to happen, and it all starts in the community. So it's called UNU, and everybody in it's chosen by the community. The community would pick it up, and it of course no political affiliation, but they're going to force you to do political affiliation. But anyway, so in my community we have doctors, we have lawyers, we have painters, we have everything. So you get everybody together. You start the little community thing, and most people have communities. A lot of people have communities that they pay into, so they can have beach access, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be just part of something that already exists.
Yeah,
so
I think the NFTs is where that, I think that was the Monopoly Men's answer to what you're talking about, because I think they foresaw.
See you next time. Sorry, I gotta go.
Uh-oh.
Right, bye-bye.
All right, Nick. Be good, buddy.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the NFTs are a great example of the response to that need with what you're talking about, or that direction where humanity is going. That we are going in that route. I truly believe that. But in
Well, it's
order
a fact.
to provide a value for, like, let's say a guy roofing your house, what's the value of him roofing your house versus a lawyer or versus a doctor? What's the different values for those individuals, and how do you base a unit per individual? What do you
Yeah.
say? You know, what my hour of time to roof your house is worth X. You know, I mean, how is that
Well,
competitive? You know,
it wouldn't be hourly. It would be job
well,
wise
right. You know what I'm
for
saying.
what the going rate is. Like Blue Book, I'll do your house. I'll paint your whole house for a satisfying quote number. Then you agree on it, and then you're like, well, what kind of trade can I do? I need to get my porch, I need to get a deck built, and I need a roof. So you come together and you have two jobs. Meanwhile, you're roofing your neighbor's house for what seems like free, but what you're getting out of it is an in-ground pool and a deck that people are like, damn, I needed to make so much money for all that, but you actually traded it and you got it in return. And yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean that's how my family worked for the longest time. You know, is come help me build these stairs, and I'll come over to your house and do this. You know, it's just you trade labor.
Yeah.
It's just we've lost, I think, track of it. We've lost the sense of community, and as a result, lost the ability to be able to properly trade in those kind of terms.
Yeah. Like, I mean, when someone's moving nowadays, everybody gets together still. You know, you need help, you get a whole team of people together and it's lighter. A lot of the time, nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to blow their back out. It's so much easier to just hire a moving company if you don't want to blow your back out yourself. Or like,
You know, it reminds me of this concept of Best Buy with their price matching issue. Saw this kind of quick little whatever thing on social media where a guy had a store repairing TVs and selling TVs. And they put a Best Buy in, and then Best Buy came with its price matching thing. So if you have anybody in the community or anybody near us that has this TV for this price, we'll match it no matter what. And then give you all of our.
Almost every store has that clause.
Right. So what this guy did is he said, okay, fine. And he put a $1 price tag on a Samsung television, which was normally $780. He put it at $1 on it, but he put it in the back room. He put an alligator in front of the television, and then he closed the door, and then he made it a very strict dress code policy of tie, a suit and tie in order to come in the store. Right. Then by that rationale, he was able to advertise the $1, and yeah, they can get it right there. Look, you know, and then turned around and then went and bought all of those TVs from Best Buy and had it for a whole year. Was able to purchase all of those TV that particular TV at $1, and so he bought, like, I don't know, it was like 50 of them at $1, and they had to honor it. And then he turns around and was able to put them in the store, and then he changed the price. Like, see, but it was all to make a point. You know, it was a point that where we would end up going with what, you know, the description, what you're saying with the trading in the community, it, unfortunately, because we've allowed corporations to be recognized as individuals and have human rights. The moment we allowed corporations to have human rights but have zero accountability in the same aspects as the human, that right there is what degraded the entire process of the capitalism or commercialism or whatever you want to call it, throughout the United States. But the moment we gave corporations human rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and we attributed to a fictional entity, a group, we gave them all human rights. When the moment that happened, it was a spiraling downhill effect.
Yeah, it makes people not have to be accountable, because how are you gonna, like, if someone in your company murders someone, the whole company has to be held accountable for it, you know, or I don't know, like weird stuff like that. Like, what if
tobacco industry is a great example. Nobody's been held accountable for all the harm that the tobacco industry's done to the people with the sprig.
Because there's a clause that they can't be held accountable, and that also anybody who got the jab, there's a clause in all of the jabs that because it was a preliminary test drug, no company can be held accountable for any lawsuit.
Right, but that's all great and fine on paper, but that ain't how God works.
No. That's for sure.
Sorry to say that, but it's true.
Yeah.
There will be accountability and there will be atonement for all of this. And I think it's it's a matter of, right now the elites, so to speak, the monopoly men, they've lost the narrative. They've lost control of the direction that this is all going. And we see that through the social media presenting all of these different things. And no, don't get me wrong, they're trying to flood everybody with false narratives and fake information and getting people down rabbit hole after rabbit hole to keep them consistently confused. But that only will work for a set amount of time before the collective consciousness, because there are individuals like yourself, like me, like Sean, Ramon, everybody, Nicholas, that all can see and sense truth when it's presented. And I think that's the difference. Energetically, in the morphogenetic field, truth always rings the loudest. And you're able to fit and nestle in to truth as an individual much more comfortably than you are lies and falsities. So they can sit here and continue to spit these falsities and these lies and this misinformation and these rabbit holes at everybody all they want. But no matter what, just like sifting sand through a sifter, the truth always comes out. And the individuals that are more receptive and able to actually receive the truth will nestle into those truths and present it and push it forward. Period. That's the way it is.
And then cults are formed.
Right. Well, I don't want to say cults, but
and religion. And then they want them to come back from the dead. And then if there's no promise that they're coming back from the dead, they invent something that's going to come back and be powerful.
Yeah, it's a cycle. Damn. Well, Sean, we've been talking for about a couple hours, man. You always come in like around the second, almost a second hour.
Right.
Good to hear.
Right.
What's up, Sean? How you doing, man?
Good, guys. Today, speaking of what you're speaking on, I just noticed that there are 12 climate videos that the Thunderbolts project has, and 5 of the videos are unavailable. I don't seem to know what those 5 videos are, but it's kind of right along the same lines of what you guys are talking about on that show. You have specialist people in science that tell other specialists, this is the way, this is the way, this is the way. It's all a cluster fuck, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And if you get guys like Piers Corbin is on here, guy Bill Nichols, Wall, Ben Davidson, that speak out and present their data against, we'll say, climate change. Oh no, whoa. Fact checkers say that that's wrong. Take them down, ostracize them, get away from us. It almost presents like a perverse way. Kind of we are as human beings. Like we're very perverse people. You think that after coming through the Galileo and Copernican revolutions, we kind of got ourselves together, but no. We came up with ideas that still took us completely down the wrong path after, how long was it between Ptolemy science and Galileo Copernican era? 1,000+ years or whatever. I don't know. It's just sad you're talking about politics. The same thing. Yeah. Religion, same thing. Man. Well, so presents like a sad state that we're in here. You know what I mean?
Well, I was going to make that comment a second ago. It almost places you with these, like using the Best Buy as an example, or Walmart, whatever, running small businesses out and all of these things. It almost presents a situation where you're left in a state of despair of you can't beat them, so I have no choice but to join them. And again, that's what I was trying to explain a little bit earlier, buddy, is that's the parameters that are being established by these whatever ruling groups that are establishing these parameters, and we are all like frogs inside of boiling water. We're just sitting there letting the water get hotter and hotter until it is going to disrupt and destroy humanity if we're not careful, because it will go into a flip type scenario where it's you can't get out any, you know what I'm saying? You can't get out of the water. All the damage has been done. Now there's no way to get out. Versus, like you're saying earlier, of looking at life from a more, we've achieved more, we've done better, we have great technologies, we've, the looking at things in a more positive and uplifting manner. When is humanity going to start doing that? That's the question. Instead of allowing this constant downward spiral, when are we going to have the so to speak, flip take place?
It's not intriguing to do that. And when we start doing that, then it's all vanity. We will live in a society that's all vanity as it is anyway. And once we're fulfilled and everything is going great, all we talk about is the bad news. You can't have the good news in the Bible without the bad news and the doom and gloom. That's what makes most cults is revelation. People get obsessed with revelation and then start saying all sorts of weird stuff, which I've seen that time and time again. And I do the same thing. Does it mean that what I'm saying is crazy? Not that I know of, because the New Jerusalem is made with pearls and it's the golden street down the city. And everything is proportioned the same way as the Dougherty set, which makes me think that we've known this technology before. We've done this technology before. It was an old ancient Hebrew practice, and St. John lays it all out, which is technically the only book that Jesus wrote in the Bible, because it was a vision from Jesus. So, I don't know. Beautiful book.
Yeah, Jacob's Ladder, Ezekiel's wheel. I mean, there's constant proof of evidence within the Bible of, advanced technologies.
What is the vine? What is the vine that they talk about? And trimming of the vine. Jesus is the way, the truth, the life, the King of Kings. All of the highest things that we talked about back then. We need to know that old information, so we need to know what it was called and what people were after. People were after peace and preservation and peace, preservation, and a happy home. Now people are after a lot of different other things, and it doesn't matter how their kids turn out. They just want to go do things. They just want to go and experience the world because they feel that their kids are a burden. That's why I think it's kind of better to have children when you're in your 20s or younger, not younger than 20s, but in your 20s, because then you can grow up and you can have a life later, and you have your youth to help take care of them, the energy to help take care of them, versus trying to fulfill all your goals later in life and raising children.
Right.
But that's just my own personal perspective. But
man, this has been a great freaking call. Good Lord.
Yeah, definitely. Great call, and it all comes back to hair.
Right? Yeah, Sean, you missed the whole hair portion, man. We have to share that with you.
Oh wow.
Yeah. God, it was good. Dang. But I got to get off, man. I'm sorry, but I
see the call.
Yeah, I got to jump off and feed my dogs. They're all at the door begging.
Cool. Well, it's been a good talk, Sean. Try to hop in a little earlier next time if you can.
Yeah. Every time, man.
Okay.
Every time. All right, guys. Thanks so much. Appreciate your time, buddy. Sean, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Take it easy.
Y'all be good.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.
The geometric view is a love is watching product. Love is watching being. Thank you for doing that. Keep your eyeballs out. Pay attention. There's a lot going down this year. Be vigilant. Be mindful. Be insightful. Be loving.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for being kind. Share the love, spread the love, become the love. Amen.
all over the wall, eyes all over your body. And I can see straight through with transparent golden scaling. The largest of the atom must embark on this because this is the journey. The journey is life. Take hold. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. There's nothing to do. Join us in the fight for Christ, in the fight to save lives. Surprise, submersible, so fast, the first, the last of baptism. Need to say more. Pay attention like the marrow in your bones, arrow in your back, arrow in your lungs, zero into the fact, tertiary Christian neurons, synapses and narrow endurance into eternity. I'm a courier, a charismatic attitude, modern meters, even meter, it might even be fun. Cider indeed, need nerds, you need nerds, need a virtue, need to be a reason. Feasibility to be a reason to be clean and sober, keys, open doors, signs of directions. Be the carrier of candlesticks, the man who brought you change. Every second you ride, until in your ribbon, you pivot, potential, you could be cat, could be cold, could be copycat, could be copy corpse, could be Schrodinger's best, could be micro-actor, Mackie, normal, open-minded, itsy-bitsy, freaking huge, a universal supermassive aspect of attached awareness. Aware of this all? Collaborative consumption. Are you aware of this all? Collaborative consumption. The new thing consumption. Collaborative consumption. Get up now! Out of the boat! Drop! Where did it go? We don't got about not about it, girl. But about it, not about it, got us spirit. Get up, what's up? Shut out, chop, girl. Red, and on foot, I'm in search of, I'm in earth love, I'm in living life, I'm in living color, I'm in air drop, I'm an earth thing, I'm an earth thing, I'm an earth thing, I'm an earth thing.
never give up, 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 never give up.
All music in the Geometric View episodes is produced and created by Skullet. That's SKULLET.